Hi, I'm Nick Castle. I'm a member of Leap and I was a serving police officer um, and I was medically retired in about 2006 after being assaulted on duty. I'm here today to just talk about how I went from fighting the war on drugs to acknowledging that it's a failure and that we need a change in legislation, that we need to regulate drugs rather than be punitive and criminalise people. My story really starts back in the 1980s. I remember hearing Nancy Reagan shouting, "Just say no," and saying to people, "Just say no to drugs, just say no." And then the message came over to England. There was a storyline run on a very popular TV programme at the time called Grange Hill, where one of the characters became a heroin user and eventually had an overdose. And they released a song called Just Say No, which I think it may have even gone to #1. But that was a message that was being put forward to teenagers at that time, was just say no to drugs. And that's a message which many people are still putting forward today. When I left school, I started initially working in a local pharmacy, and in the late 80s, as a teenager, I was involved in setting up one of the first community needle exchange schemes and methadone programs in the local community. And I started talking to and getting to know drug users in the area. That was the start of my involvement with drugs. And over the next several years, I worked with young single homeless people, where my role was dealing with homeless people that had a drug problem. One day I was round at my mother-in-law's and my brother-in-law was filling out an application for Lancashire Constabulary, and I started looking at it and I thought, this sounds interesting. And my mother-in-law at the time said, "If my son can't get in, you don't stand a chance." Well, that spurred me on and I applied, and I was successful and he failed. And as I went through the recruitment process, I realised I want to fight crime. I want to deal with drug users. I want drug dealers. I want to take drugs off the street. I want to deal with burglary. I want to deal with car crime. And then during a briefing quite early on in my career, a DS from the intelligence unit came and gave a talk about recruiting informants. I was blown away. I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is how to get involved with doing drug jobs, executing warrants and locking up drug dealers. I started doing what he said and it worked. I started recruiting informants. I had a small group of informants that I was running, and I started doing bigger and bigger jobs. Then one day I ended up working with a proactive CID team, and the DS there started teaching me and helping me and guiding me, teaching me about covert policing, how to fight crime, deal with drugs. With his help and a bit of perseverance, I got accepted on a course to become an undercover officer, which I went on and passed. And I was then involved in a variety of jobs. That's when I started realising slowly that, hang on, things aren't quite as they seem here. We need to have a look at this. And I suppose the first thing that really struck me was the violence. The more that I did, the more strategies I developed, the more strategies the police developed in general, and the more we went after drug dealers, the more violence there was on the streets. Not just violence on the streets between drug users and drug dealers, but it spread across the whole community. As we go after drug dealers, the people who get higher and higher up this tree of dealers, they want to protect themselves and protect their business, and so they've got to control the people below them, and the only way they can do that is through fear and intimidation, and that means violence. They would make sure the message went out that people mustn't talk or introduce a cop into a gang, and our job was obviously to get around that. But also the fear spread into communities, and I've seen communities where they felt like they couldn't talk to the police, they were scared, and very often crimes went unreported. But then, in addition to that, there is the violence that I saw against the police and the intimidation that there is against police. I was followed, I was attacked, I was actually attacked outside my own home, and then people would try intimidating me. I've been surrounded in a car where people have tried getting me, saying that they was going to chop my head off and parade it down the streets. There's no end to what they'll do. I've seen people use firearms, knives. I've even known people be involved with explosives. And the bottom line is it's all to control the drugs market.